Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are. This is the second time I go live on this channel, and I'm very happy about the experience. The first episode, we went live last week, and we talked about being a self-taught software engineer. That was a great episode. We got a lot of awesome questions, and I'm hoping that this episode will be the same. We will get a lot of different interesting things from the audience and from whoever is watching. Whoever has joined me today, thank you very much for doing so. For whoever is watching the recording after the live is ended, also thank you very much for your support. In today's session, we're going to be talking about toxic engineering cultures or toxic work cultures in general. And I say engineering because well, I work in software engineering or software development, whatever you want to call it, and my experience has been in this domain. Toxic cultures are I'm not going to say dominant, but they are pretty much everywhere. No matter where you are in the world, no matter which country you live in or you work in, there are different companies that do things differently. And throughout your career and your journey in this field, you're going to experience the really good companies, really good cultures, and the really bad ones and really horrible ones. And I personally, throughout my journey, have been in sort of both. And I want to share with the people who are starting on their careers, and even people who had lengthy careers. I want to share with you what both ends of the spectrum look like, so that you understand that options exist. And it's very important for you to be aware of this, because for a lot of time in my career, I felt like this is the only way things could be. And when I say the only way, I mean the bad stuff. You could easily feel stuck. You could easily feel suffocated. You could easily feel that this is the only way the world is run or companies are run. And it's easy to feel that these bad practices that are happening are the norm. And then the problem becomes that you start picking up these bad practices and then replicating those and then perpetuating the problem without fixing these bad behaviors or bad practices. And it's not necessarily out of malice or because people are evil or they are bad by nature, but it's because a lot of times it's because of lack of awareness and also lack of proper training. Being good managers is not necessarily just about having some time in the field or seniority in terms of time in the domain. Being good managers and good leaders requires conscious efforts towards achieving desired outcomes and results. And this is what I want to talk about today in detail. I think it's inevitable for companies to go through different journeys. And a company could also be in a good state where they have a good culture at a certain size. And maybe when they start growing and adding more people, the culture will morph. At the end of the day, the culture is not something that someone defines. It's the result of all the interactions of whoever works at the company that or in the group or in the field where a bunch of people are working. A culture is born. It's an emerging property. It's not something that you just infuse into a community of people, right? You can definitely do things to help certain behaviors emerge, but you cannot really define the culture of a company. So first of all, let's start by defining what is a toxic culture. How does it look like? What are the signs of it? And how does it manifest, right? And the first thing I want to talk about is top-down decision-making. In a lot of companies and enterprises that have sort of where engineers are not, let's say, happy with the work that they're doing. And happy is a very big word because no one's really continuously happy. But I'm just saying, let's say satisfied in the work that they do, and that the satisfaction rates are, let's say, above average, okay? Top-down decision-making does not help with that. And what is top-down decision-making? It's basically when leadership makes decisions without consulting anyone from the different levels of the hierarchy, and that just imposes these decisions top-down, and then does not give a choice to whoever's working in that hierarchy to influence that decision in any way, shape, or form, to even formulate an opinion about it, and then basically the outcome is an ultimatum. Take it or leave it. There's really no other scenario. This is what we decided. This is what we think is best for the whole group. This is how it's going to be. You either do it our way or take the highway, go find another job. Unfortunately, a lot of enterprises are guilty of this, irrespective of the size. Of course, companies that take care of their people, they try to avoid this approach because agency is very important. Yes, we are employees in a larger company. Yes, we take our salaries from a certain company, but we did not sell our soul, right, to that company. And it's very important to feel that we are sort of in control of what is happening to us on a day-to-day basis. I think a lot of the satisfaction at work, of course, comes from having the ability or a sense of autonomy when it comes to how we work and how we, and I'm not saying that everyone should do whatever they feel like doing. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm trying to say is people should feel like they can participate in the decision-making process, even if they're not always going to influence the outcomes to whatever suits their perspective. But people need to feel that they are part of this whole, journey. They are part of the whole process. They have some sense of control and agency, and feel that they are able to decide what their future is going to look like, even if it's not making all of the decisions. There needs to be some level of participation. So, first of all, top-down decision making is really horrible. Sometimes it's unavoidable, of course, but the more transparency you can have, the better, the more satisfaction your teams will have. And you really want to avoid making all the decisions behind closed doors, not consulting anyone prior to, and not even sharing outcomes after decision making is done. No transparency also falls into this line. The next item is arbitrary deadlines. Throughout my career, I've been faced with a lot of arbitrary deadlines coming out of nowhere. We need to build this feature and ship it next week. Why next week? Nobody has an answer. Just some middle manager or maybe even a manager decided that this is the perfect time for us to ship. This is when we want to make this available. And that's it. Everyone needs to fall into place. Everything needs to fall into place. We don't really care about what we can do, what we cannot do. What matters is that we need to ship this X feature and it needs to go out of the door by that arbitrary deadline. And that's really horrible because arbitrary deadlines really help no one. The managers might feel that they are in control, but are they really? Because if we're not really doing a feasibility analysis, if we're not doing proper estimations, if we're not really thinking about what's going to happen, building this feature, and if we're not really anticipating all the problems that might arise, the unknowns, all of the different factors that affect the software engineering process, what are we really doing? And then what's even worse is when we try to mask this arbitrary deadline setting with agile practices, as we call them. A lot of companies today adopt Scrum or different forms of what we call agile. Agile was born to break down this rigid process of software development. It was formed to just, completely eradicate, and I'm not saying eradicate structure and processes. It was formed, I'm trying to say, is to make people and the engineering groups and teams more dynamic, much more effective, faster, without really having to go blindly through different processes. And then we come with defining the different ceremonies of Scrum that are completely non-nudgeable. They can't change. And then on top of that, we start imposing arbitrary deadlines whereby we say, okay, we have this 10, 15, I don't know, whatever story points, and the team needs to ship 120 story points by the end of the sprint, which is 2 weeks. Why? Who defined these story points? Why is it even a metric to measure? And then what's worse is that we start talking about analytics on top of the story points and start measuring calculating numbers and evaluating the team members based on how many story points they complete per sprint, and all of these ridiculous, non-healthy, non-productive ways. Now you'll say, Bassem, okay, great, but how do we measure productivity of a team? There's a lot of awesome research that's been done in this area. Look up the DORA metrics and DORA analysis, for example, on how productive teams do agile, and what are the key performance indicators that they look at, and what do they mean, and how do they reflect team happiness, team satisfaction. I'm not going to call it happiness again. I'm sorry about the mistake. How do they affect performance, overall performance of the team? How much fast do they ship? What do they ship? It's not just about shipping fast, but it's also about what do we ship? What's the quality of the ship? And did we really design things the way they should be, right? Again, arbitrary deadlines help no one. If you impose a deadline on your team that you just woke up and thought about, this is an arbitrary deadline. It doesn't help. Do your analysis with the team. Come up with your different engineering teams with sensible, deadlines. Discuss feasibility. Challenging thoughts and ideas and asking for evidence is amazing, and no one's saying don't do that, right? But take the time to go through the process and define your deadlines based on a rigorous analysis of feasibility and all of that stuff, right? Very important point about toxic engineering cultures and toxic environments: lack of diversity. If you join a company where the company is composed of pretty much the same profile, right? Be it gender profile, be it racial profile, be it whatever profile, right? This is a red flag that you need to be aware of. If you do not see enough diversity within the team, if the team is not composed from different cultures, different backgrounds, different countries, different whatever. And I'm not saying every company can achieve like a substantial amount of diversity, but I'm just saying, like, if there's no diversity whatsoever, this is a red flag for you. You need to start thinking about where you are working and how the diversity is going to affect the work environment. And I'm not saying that if a group of people lacks diversity, that this is a toxic environment. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that be wary of this type of environment, because people with the same background, they tend to converge on the same ideals or same values or same principles or same ways of working. And then if you come and you don't really converge with them on these same practices, you will be the one who's going to be cast out. And this is what's going to create the toxicity. You're going to feel like the intruder on this very homogeneous culture or homogeneous group. While if a group is already diverse by design, then people will not feel left out, because they will be, part of this nice mix of different cultures, different backgrounds, different thoughts, different ideas, and they're not going to feel left out. Well, they could be left out, because of course you can be homogeneous on level of ideas, and behavior can be toxic irrespective of where you're coming from. But I'm not saying if a group is more diverse, the probability of it being more heterogeneous in terms of how they approach problem solving, how they approach communication, is much higher than a group of people who are homogeneous. So again, think about diversity and what's the effect of lack of diversity on the toxic engineering cultures. This is my favorite, because I have been guilty of doing this in previous work. And whatever I'm talking about from my also personal experience, what I've seen, and what I have been guilty of. Of course, I have participated in bad practices for lack of awareness, or for peer pressure, or for just following the norm in a certain company. And especially early on in my career, I have developed a lot of bad practices because I just didn't know that there is a better way to do things, right? This is what I've seen, and this is what I've just, tried to normalize and just be part of. So this one I hate a lot. It's the hero syndrome. Be very afraid of engineering teams that rely on heroes. And heroes are people who think of themselves and that the company considers indispensable. They are the engineering gurus that pretty much know everything about everything in the code base. They are the only ones who understand the code base, and no one can challenge any decision making that they do or any of their thought process, because First of all, the managers or the company is afraid of losing this guru because they are worried that no one else will understand the code base beside them. And at the same time, these gurus go on power trips quite often, and they basically enforce their own thoughts and methodologies and opinions and ideas on everyone else. This is the hero syndrome. Avoid it like the plague. This is not an engineering culture you want to be part of. This is not an engineering culture you want to participate in, because it's always going to revolve around that single or group of heroes, single person or a group of heroes that are going to govern the whole software development, software engineering, software design process. This is horrible. It leaves no room for people to be creative. It leaves no room for people to express their ideas. It leaves no room for change because an improvement, because the heroes feed on the fact that the product or the system or the service or whatever it is, the product or the service or whatever it is, let's say, is not good, because they are the only ones who can maintain this spaghetti of a mess. If these things change for the better, then their raison d'être or their reason for existence disappears, and this is against what they have built up the reputation or whatever, or their practices for. And this is very important to be aware of. I've been guilty of being the hero in certain previous jobs. I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely a good feeling to feel like you're indispensable. It's a good feeling for people to approach you with problems that only you can solve, or at least you think that only you can solve. But overall, this is very detrimental for the groups of people working with you, especially the other engineers. They're gonna feel they have less value. They're gonna feel that they are less powerful, and basically the outcome of their work is gonna be way, way less than their potential. And this is a gigantic loss for companies. For everyone listening in, for the future managers, please do not feed into the hero culture. Of course, there are varying degrees of performance. Of course, there are people who are going to be more performant than others. There are going to be people who are going to do better. There are going to be people who are still going to grow. Make sure that you try to get the best out of everyone, and do not isolate and put the spotlight on your heroes. Do not create this hero syndrome in your engineering culture. This is very, very bad. The derivative of the hero syndrome is creating what is called as SWAT teams, or Black Ops, or just pick any nomenclature or any naming from the military, and just drop it on this particular team. And what I'm talking about is basically, in an engineering culture, you create a team of what you call senior people or senior engineers, or a group of heroes. And then this SWAT team basically does different interventions, where it can basically join a project that is not performing well, for example, or a project that is suffering, and then the SWAT team is supposed to fix the problem. This is like really, really horrible, extremely bad practice. It will demoralize the entire company. No good will come out of this. Maybe on the short term, the problems will be fixed, but on the long term, this will create frustration. It will create resentment. It will create a huge churn, and your engineers leaving. Please do not feed into this, and please never, ever create a SWAT team amongst your engineering groups. I see here a comment from Muhammad Baidoun. He says, unfortunately, we lack proper training when it comes to Agile and what it really means. There is a gap between the theory and its applicability. A lot, for example, think Scrum is a methodology of project management, even though it is just a framework or guideline. Thank you very much. It's very well said. This is not to forget the culture, especially in our region. I fully support this. Unfortunately, I've made the mistake of thinking that Scrum is, like a set of methodologies that you need to religiously adopt, otherwise it will fail. I've been victim of this also, just because, again, it's a lack of awareness. It's not having the ability to see the other side or how things are done elsewhere. And then when you see how things are done elsewhere, it expands your horizon a little bit. And it did not really help to have a lot of the coaching, training, business culture around, agile. And when we transformed agile from, just a manifesto, a guideline, like a way of working, a high level definition, and transformed it into this rigorous process, that didn't really help the cause. It could work for certain engineering cultures. I'm not saying everywhere you go, Scrum is bad. I'm just saying that maybe it's time to think otherwise. Let's move on. I think we talked enough about Scrum and Agile. Another form of unhealthy things you could spot in toxic engineering cultures are unhealthy hierarchies. There was a point where there was this idea started to perpetuate where we need to create flat structures because people did not really respond well to authority, specifically amongst software engineers. I'm guilty of that myself. I don't really work well with authority. I don't appreciate authority. I would never work in the military ever in my life. But I'm just saying, flat structures, flat hierarchies started perpetuating. But the opposite end of the spectrum is where we have very strict hierarchies. And the worst type of these hierarchies are the businesses where that consider that the business units, sales, be it sales or management or whatever, non-technical, is much more superior than the engineering units, right? These are companies that think of managers to be much more valuable than individual contributors. These are the organizations or companies that compensate managers at a much higher bracket, much higher band than they would compensate their engineers. It's the companies that promote that think that the next step from being an individual contributor as basically a software engineer is to go and take on a management role with HR responsibilities, and then the sky is the limit for how far you can go from there. Of course, we build software products or services or whatever because we are in a capitalist system, right? We want to build businesses that function and succeed. We want to build businesses that thrive. The end goal of software engineering is to, of course, capture all of the greatness of what we can achieve, build stuff that is useful for people, but it's also to build sustainable businesses. And from there, I can understand the emphasis on the business part, but that does not mean that the business governs everything. In big tech, you will see engineering decisions being measured with equal weight to the business decisions, whereby it's not always about the bottom line. And what I'm trying to say is it's not always about the money. So if we are faced with a decision where we can make really gigantic gains, but catastrophically hurt the engineering aspect of it, and this could manifest in, for example, building up a lot of technical debt that will take us years to eliminate, but to make a short-term profit, these have to be evaluated, and it's very wrong for the business to win in this case. In strong engineering environments, the engineering group can provide sufficient evidence and support and to deter from making such bad decisions. And in the companies that think of the business to be way more important than engineering, and that the engineers will just clear out the technical debt magically, I don't know how, right? And we use the term technical debt for a reason. It's called debt because it has to be paid at some point. In the cultures where business is more important and they dismiss the engineering warnings, the costs of that will be really great and they will be very detrimental. And you don't want to be part of that type of environment. This is me talking also from personal experience. A derivative from that is the companies who consider engineering a cost center. Please be aware of this, especially the software engineers who are starting out their careers. if you join a company where engineering is a cost center, and that means that the engineering work that is done is a cost to the business. It's not making money for the business. You will not have a nice engineering experience. You'll always be treated as a peripheral role. Your work will always be peripheral to the center, of gravity, to the center of where the money is being made. I wish someone told me this early on in my career. This would help you avoid a lot of pain. I'm not saying that you should not join roles or take on roles that are in sort of peripheral. There will always be a need for engineers in different places, in, for example, industries where software engineering is not really the core aspect of the business. Some of these companies do really well because they build a nice culture. I'm not saying everywhere is horrible, but there are a good chunk of these companies where, if engineering is a peripheral function, yeah, you're not going to have a nice experience over there, and it's not going to be a good culture that fosters your own development, that fosters good engineering practices. It's always going to be about what will engineering do to support the core business, and how can we make more money from the core business, and how can engineering support that. If a company does not invest in training, educating, and in basically learning and development of their engineering team, that will lead to also bad outcomes. I'm not saying this would lead to a toxic culture, but it's a sign that things might not be ideal. Investing in training engineers is essential. Yes, I'm not saying that a startup of 2 people should invest in thousands of dollars every year in training individuals. I understand that money might be tight, there's not a lot of runway, so on and so forth. But there is really no justification for a multi-million-dollar business, right, or a multi-million-dollar organization from providing appropriate training to their engineers and to their software engineers and engineering teams in general. Of course, the rest of the company as well. But I'm just, again, focusing on engineering because this is the topic of the day. Training is essential, and training that should not come in the form of, you just go do some certification and we will pat you on the back for it. No, there should be dedicated budgets for L&D, and there should be proper planning for how this L&D budget is going to be used. And there should be conscious steps to utilize this L&D budget appropriately. Obviously, if people don't want to learn, that's their choice. No matter how much you allocate in terms of L&D budgets, learning and development budgets, people are just not gonna learn. What I'm trying to say is, good companies have good training programs for their engineers, and this will foster a better engineering culture overall, because your software engineers will be much more equipped. They will build up more knowledge faster, quicker, so on and so forth. Compensation ranges. This is very important. A sign of bad engineering cultures is also being compensated below the market rates. This is a very edgy topic. A lot of people don't want to talk about their compensation. I want to talk about this topic, and it's very, very important. It's very important for us engineers to also be transparent about our compensations and talk about these things, so that we can provide each other with better outcomes and better leverage in negotiations, right? You need to know your worth. You are worth a lot in this hot market today. Every single company on this planet is transforming into a software company. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Tech is governing the whole world today. And I'm not saying this out of hubris or out of ego. It's just the description of the reality. Every company needs software developers. Every company needs software engineers. Do not join companies that pay below the market rate, period. Okay? You are worth a lot. Companies are making gigantic amounts of value and money out of you, and you should be compensated fairly. I'm not saying you should all become multimillionaire rich, but you should be compensated at least not below the market rates. It's very important. This is a very bad sign if you are joining a company that negotiates to pay you less than the market rates. Do your research, ask the people who are in the same position. It's okay to talk about your compensation with your colleagues. Please do, because then you will discover how good or bad you are compensated. It's a very important conversation to have. I love GitHub for this particular reason. In our employee book, we are not prevented from discussing our compensation with our colleagues. So that's for a reason. Please make sure that you talk about your salaries with your colleagues. It's not a taboo. It should not be a taboo. Do it, because this guarantees better outcomes for everyone. Let go of this self-preservation, mindset where, you don't talk about your salary because you're afraid of hurting others. Maybe you're making more, maybe you're making less, and you just don't want to make the others feel uncomfortable. What is better, like to make them feel uncomfortable for a little bit, or for them to get proper compensation for their hard work, right? So please talk about all of these things, and make sure you don't join companies that pay below the market rate. You're not going to have a good experience. If they are cutting costs on your salaries, they will definitely be cutting costs in all of the other aspects that will make you successful in your career, and they will most likely not be investing in anything regarding your training or education, so on and so forth. Another sign, and I see here World DJ is saying software development as a peripheral organ is indeed mostly bad, but once again I ask myself, how would automation spread out if not by starting as a peripheral organ? Wow, nice. That's a nice way of looking at it. Of course, I'm not trying to say that software engineering has to be at the core of every single business and every single thing. There is also a bad movement that's spreading whereby we in tech think that we can solve all of the problems of the world by software. That's not the case. There are a lot of different disciplines that are required. There are a lot of different disciplines that are much more important. There are a lot of different disciplines that have a higher, deeper impact in so many different areas. Software development is one of those disciplines that has a far reach, but that does not mean that we can solve every single problem in the world via software. We need to stop thinking of ourselves as, universal problem solvers just because we are able to write a few lines of code that can do certain things. Sorry to be preachy. I don't intend to be preachy. I know no one wants to listen to that, especially towards the end of the week. But again, I'm just sharing my perspective and my opinion. I'm not trying to virtue signal at all. Each one of us has their different perspective on this matter, but I also see this as a common trend, and I think a little bit of awareness on this is always good and in good faith. Very important topic about toxic engineering cultures is high churn rate or high turnover rate, which means that people who join the company leave very quickly, or you have people leaving at a very high rate. And it's pretty common. So I've worked in companies where people would not last more than a year and a half, 2. They would just join for a year, and probably if they had the chance or option to leave earlier, they would have done so. But it probably would look bad on their resume. It would look bad on their resume. So they stick around for at least a year and then they drop out or leave. This is a red flag and a sign that things might not be great. You should keep an eye on the churn rate and ask about it in your interview. I ask about it in my own interview, and every interview I do. If I'm applying somewhere, I ask about their churn rate. And if they're not able to give me a number or tell me about their churn rate and how many people are leaving in a certain period of time, that's also a bad indication. Do not be desperate for the job. We are in a domain where we are highly in demand. You should be aware of this. I'm not trying to, promote bad faith. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying companies are evil. I'm not saying any of this. I'm just trying to help you understand your worth and help you understand what is best for you. Ask about the churn rate. If it is high, that means people are not satisfied with their job. That means there are a lot of bad things that might be happening inside the company. If one person leaves, okay. If 2 leave, start asking questions. If 3, 4, 5 leave and it becomes a trend that is repeating, There must be something wrong that's happening inside. It could be bad management, it could be bad colleagues, bad product, bad whatever. Ask about it, know what you're getting into. I don't want to talk about toxic stuff, and the list really goes on. I just want to share with you also what a healthy culture looks like, and I'm going to do this in the second part. But there are a few points that I still want to mention that are very important. Lack of real seniors. If you join a team fully composed of junior developers, that's a bad sign. Where are the seniors, and why aren't there? Why aren't they there? Is it because the company doesn't want to invest in seniors, or is it because the seniors know something that you don't, and maybe they have left already? So if you're joining a team fully of juniors, think about it really well. Think about what you're getting into. It's probably because of cost-cutting purposes or cost-cutting reasons. It's probably because the seniors discovered that the product or the service or whatever is designed in a very bad way, and there is really no way that they could recoup this or fix it or make it better. It's probably because of bad practices, bad management, and maybe it's because of everything I already listed above. Think very well if you join a team that has no senior engineers in it. Lack of people who stayed at the company for more than 2 years. And I also asked this in my interviews. Do you have people that have been in your company for more than 2 years? And if so, do you have an average figure for how long people stay at your company? And if the answer is no, that means that the company is basically recycling individuals every couple of years. That means that they really thrive on people leaving and then new people coming in, because new people coming in, they might come with fresh ideas, and that's also fine. But if the whole company is operating this way, that means there's really no longevity here, and that means that it's not really a good place for you to stay for a extended period of time. And it could be for any of the reasons I listed above. Maybe there's really no career path, no career growth, no room for growth whatsoever. Maybe it's because of bad management practices, so on and so forth. But again, it's just something to be curious about and to ask about, especially during your interview. And if the answer is no, people are not here, ask why. Ask them why. Ask directly, why are people leaving if they don't stay for more than 2 years? And another red flag for me is if the company is composed of a lot of people who stayed more than 6 years in a certain company. Why are people staying there for a really long time? Is it because they are too comfortable? That might not necessarily be an indication of a toxic culture, but that could be an indication that there might not necessarily be good challenges for you within that company. That could be that people just, go in, they join the company, and they just get comfortable staying there. And that's also fine. And it's also okay if you want to join a team like that, but just keep it in mind and ask about these things. It's important. Now, we talk about a favorite topic of mine, which is incident management, and how do we deal with an incident when it happens. An indication of a toxic engineering culture is finger pointing. It's basically when an incident happens, and incidents happen everywhere. It's inevitable. If you don't want to have any incidents, you don't write software. If you don't want to have security vulnerabilities exploited, plug off the internet, right? So these are the fundamental rules. They cannot be changed. Any product that you write will have bugs. Any product you deploy in a production environment, they will have incidents. There will be downtime. 100%. That's why you never see a service level agreement with 100% uptime. No one will promise you this, because they would be paying money left, right, and center. You will see SLAs for 99.99. And if you calculate that across a year, that means you have a few hours maybe of downtime per year, or maybe even a few days if it's 99.9 or something like that. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's something along these lines. 99.9 out of 365 days. So you can calculate how many hours of downtime that is. Point being, what I'm trying to say is there is no company in the world that does not have some level of downtime. And what happens when there is an incident and downtime, and after that incident and downtime happens, is very important. Toxic engineering cultures will be finger pointing. They will be saying, Bassem, you deployed this to production. You are responsible for this bad thing. You did a bad job. You're going to be punished for it. there's a difference between accountability and punishing people for problems. Problems are going to happen. It's normal. You should not be belittled for a problem. You should not feel like you are an idiot, or that you are stupid, or that you are inexperienced for causing an outage. Outages will always happen. Many senior engineers I know, and myself included, we have dropped tables in production databases. We have taken websites down. We have done outages in so many different places we cannot even imagine. We have introduced bugs. Some of them are still in systems we have worked on until today. What I'm trying to say is, with experience, you will have more awareness about the stuff you need to, think about. You start drafting playbooks for how you do deployments, so on and so forth. But outages are inevitable, and any engineering culture that points fingers and they blame individuals for specific outages, and then it becomes a stigma where, like, every time they get reminded that you did this outage, and then you lose trust because of a certain problem. This is a culture you want to avoid. This is a culture you don't want to be part of. This is not how postmortems are done. This is not how this incident management is done. Good incident management is done by evaluating as a team the situation, describing with evidence exactly what happened, having a very clear timeline of the incident and how it unfolded, right? And at the end of the day, after doing this analysis and understanding the root cause for the incident, it is also about drafting how we can avoid this in the future, and what are the lessons learned, and how can we document this so that future people and teams do not repeat these same mistakes. This is how a post-mortem, or post-mortem is very bad thing to say. This is how a post-incident, let's say, response handles the situation. And nowhere in any of these steps will there be any finger pointing or blaming of individuals for these problems. We are all learning, and what's more important than incidents and the resolution time and whatnot is, what did we learn from it, and how much did we learn from it? It's very important. If you join companies that have extreme risk averse, everything they do, they want it to be risk free. They are paranoid. Oh man, I cannot even begin to. I get the chills when I remember some of the encounters I had in my career with extremely paranoid people. You don't want to work with. There's a level between. There's a, let's say, a huge difference between being cautious, right? Cautious is fine. Cautious is normal. Questioning things is okay, but being paranoid and going out of the line with this, that's really bad. So if you feel like your manager is paranoid about different things, yeah, that's a bad sign, unfortunately. Lack of trust and heavy compartmentalization. These are important as well. If you're not trusted to do your job, why the hell is this company paying you money for? It's important for you to gain trust and to have trust, and for the teams and managers to grant you the trust immediately as you start working. You need to be productive. That does not mean that if you join the bank, you should have the keys to the vault, right? I'm not preaching bad practices. There are certain security measures that are sensible, that are important to protect you, to protect the company, to protect the group, to protect the assets of people. There are a lot of, regulated environments, regulated enterprises. I'm not preaching chaos, but within the boundaries that you are allowed, you should have a sufficient amount of trust for you to operate, productively. If you are not trusted as a developer, as a software engineer, there's a problem, because you're building these systems that are going to run in production. If they don't trust you with the bare minimum to maybe even own your device, or I don't know, have access to certain systems that allow you to be productive, how are they trusting you with writing good code, right? So again, keep this in mind. Think about it when you are working in a certain environment. And the last two points, or last point I want to mention in toxic cultures and what are the manifestations of toxic cultures, are lack of vision and the lack of strong leadership. Why does this lead to a toxic culture? Because if the leadership team and the management team do not define a vision, what are they defining? Are they spending their time micromanaging people? Because that's not what leadership should do. The leadership team, CEOs, CTOs, high-level managers should state the problems so that everyone else goes and solves the problems. They should not be fixing the problems themselves, and they should be setting the long-term vision, the roadmap. Where are we heading? They should set the direction. They should not be at the steering wheel and steering the ship. That's not their job. They should not be at the rudder. They should not be anywhere else in the ship. They should be somewhere defining where we are heading in general and letting everyone, work towards achieving that direction or objective or that, outcome. If your managers fail to define a vision, if they fail to communicate a proper direction, that is a sign of weak leadership, and that is also a sign that a lot of bad practices will start manifesting in many forms. Again, micromanagement, it could be in the form of dealing with a lot of arbitrary deadlines, because if no vision is set, any middle manager can come in and say, okay, we're doing this and this and that. Nobody's there to make them accountable and whatnot. You could be working on features that are not important or solutions that are not really relevant for your business objectives and business outcomes. I need a small sip of water because I've been talking for 45 minutes. I would love it if you have any questions. I really don't want these lives to be a monologue, but if I don't see questions, I'm just going to keep on going. I would love to have a conversation with you. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I see everything on every platform. So you can drop them on YouTube, you can drop them on Facebook, you can drop them on LinkedIn, you can even drop them on Twitter. And I would love to take your questions and try to, share with you my thoughts on all of these different topics. All right, awesome. Now, let us jump to the second part of this live. And I think we have about 13 minutes left before we get to the top of the hour. I want to share with you what a healthy engineering culture would look like, right? And of course, you would say, but Bassem, isn't a healthy engineering culture exactly the opposite of what you just described? Well, in a way, yes, but also the other end of the spectrum, the other extreme might not always necessarily be good. What I want to say is about this is the following. A healthy engineering culture is basically a company or an organization that have, yes, I see here a great question from Dean, how to behave in this kind of toxic environments. Very good question. I would love to answer this. My thoughts on this are as follows. If you can influence, raise awareness, discuss, some problems are solvable. That doesn't mean you have to just take it in, absorb it, and not deal with and avoid dealing with this. Try to be confrontational. And confrontational, when I say that, I don't mean pick up a fight with your managers. I'm saying try to communicate these problems in a very clear, objective, neutral tone, right? Share it with in your one-on-ones with your managers. Communicate upwards. It's very important. People think that managers should read their minds and understand what they're going through on a day-to-day basis. And that's not necessarily the case. If you don't really communicate upwards, and not just you as an individual, but like as a group. So talk to your peers, see if they share the same experience as you. And if they do, direct that communication with your managers upwards. Let them be aware. Let them know that you are seeing these problems. Let them know about their bad behavior and gauge how they are responding. If they respond very negatively to this and they start threatening you, or they start becoming defensive, maybe it is your sign to leave, right? There are some battles that you can fight, but there are some battles that you just can't fight. And you cannot really spend all of your career fighting these battles. Sometimes you just have to make a judgment call. And the best way for companies to learn is if they actually experience a high churn rate. Unfortunately, that is the sad truth. Some companies, some managers are so self-absorbed that they just will not acknowledge that they have a problem in their behavior. And a lot of this is because a lot of people are promoted to management positions without the appropriate training. Management is not something that you just are born with. No, management is something that you have to learn. It's a skill that it's a group of skills actually that you acquire, that you have to consciously practice, that you have to first know that these good practices exist, right? So again, behaving in these toxic environments is try to solve the problem, give your company the benefit of the doubt. Do not assume that you are in a toxic environment immediately just because some of these behaviors exist. Try to work on these behaviors with your managers, try to work with your leadership team on solving these problems. And then if you really don't see any results, you always have the option to leave and look for something better. Sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Elayan. You're saying good luck for you, Bassem. Thank you very much. How an engineer could define a clear career path. I'm talking on a personal level, not on a company level. Great. Let's see. I'm not sure this is relevant for our discussion today, but I'm still gonna try to answer your question. You can define a clear career path, first of all, by discussing it also with your manager at your work, right? Because your career path in a certain organization is not just what you want, it's a combination of what you want and what the company needs from you, right? At the end of the day, do not mistake organizations or companies for family or charity or anything of that sort. We are doing a business transaction. This is work, no matter what anyone wants to convince you otherwise. It's a business transaction. It still does not mean that you should be unhappy and unsatisfied. You should be satisfied and happy, and you should even build nice relationships and bonds with your team members and colleagues. But that does not mean that you become a family. So again, build your career with your manager. There are certain ambitions that you might have, certain strategic places you want to be. You need to define whether you want to be an individual contributor or a software engineer for the rest of your life, or maybe you want to pursue a management track and become a manager. Maybe you want to pursue other directions, right? Maybe you want to do something else in the company. You want to join another team or another business unit or another, function entirely. Talk about all of these things with your managers. Explore the opportunities. This would be the first step. There is no career plan or path that works across organizations. This is a myth, and it's not linear. It's not like you jump from one step to another, right? Think about, first of all, the biggest decision you need to make is, do you want to stay as an engineer or do you want to pursue a management track? And you have to understand that the higher up you go in the chain, the more experienced you are, the less opportunities you will have, depending on the choices you make. Of course, for every manager, you will have maybe 10 engineers working, right? For every upper manager, you will have 50 managers working under them. It really depends on how the structures are. But what I'm trying to say is that the funnel gets narrower and narrower as you go up, and the opportunities become less. So again, you need to think about what you want as an individual and what you want as a person, what you want to do in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Define that, and it's okay if that changes. It's totally okay. What I envisioned for myself when I am in my 30s is completely different than where I am today. I really did not have this in mind. To be doing what I'm doing today. And still, I love it, I enjoy it, and I'm very happy and blessed to be doing what I am doing today. Well, DJ is saying that I have a feeling that toxic environments exist because of low expectation of the quality of overall product, or maybe the output isn't worth the hassle. Would toxic environment ever coexist with a successful, complicated product? Interesting. So yes, I think overgeneralization does not serve the purpose of the conversation because overgeneralization is often wrong. There is no grand theme or grand rule that governs how all the organizations and enterprises operate. You could have a very bad negative engineering culture, but still there is a product that is being built that has a high market fit. And what that means is that there is a high demand for that particular product. And even though the underlying product is a bunch of spaghetti code with technical debt and it's horrible, the managers are bad, the engineering teams are not satisfied, they are still producing, maybe at a slow cadence. But if there is sufficient demand for that product, it could be successful. It might not experience hyper growth. It might not lead to products existing for a long time, because maybe some other product that can ship faster, that has a better experience, will come in and disrupt it. But there are still markets where there are horrible, horrible products. An example of that, core banking systems. If you worked in fintech or in banking at all, you will realize that there are very horrible core banking systems, and it's very difficult to disrupt these types of you know companies that build these products. And if you go to these organizations and see how these products are built, I don't know if you're gonna find a lot of gems and super amazing engineering cultures. Again, I'm not generalizing. I'm just saying, keep that in mind. Uh, it's feasible to have a successful product with toxic engineering cultures. Look out for the signs of what a toxic culture looks like, and also I'm gonna talk about what a good culture will look like right now. So also keep those in mind and try to aim for organizations that promote and endorse these. First of all, strong leadership is, in my opinion, a very, very important. If you have a strong leader at the top, be it a man, a woman, whatever, their gender is irrelevant. Strong leader has a good vision. They share with you, long-term thoughts about what the product or services would be. They have a good position for where the company is going to be, like in 4, 5, 6, 10 years, maybe even. They communicate clearly these directions, be it in all company-wide meetings, right? Having all company-wide meetings is a very nice way to have transparency, where the leadership team will come in, they will present whatever they were working on for the past, I don't know, month, quarter, whatever it is. They will communicate the visions, the ideas. They will set the direction. They will set the tone of work for the upcoming few weeks and months. If you don't hear from your leadership team at all, yeah, that's also a bad, not necessarily a very good sign, right? So strong leadership that is able to clearly communicate the goals and objectives for the entire organization and company. Next thing is, your direct manager cares about you. Your managers, they need to care about you as an individual, also as a contributor. And the role of that manager is not to come in and dictate what you do. The role of a good manager is to come in and eliminate the obstacles from your path, so that you can do the best work that you will do in your life. That is the purpose of management. It is to eliminate obstacles from your path so that you are productive as much as possible. It's not for them to come in and say, this is how you need to do things, right? Healthy engineering cultures, they will promote autonomy, they will promote your creativity, they will come in and eliminate the roadblocks from your way and allow you to be as creative as possible. That does not mean that you're going to be the hero again, right? We do not want to fall in that anti-pattern, but that means that you work together towards Sorry, I had a small interruption. I think it was my internet connection. I hope it wasn't too long. But anyway, I was saying a good manager is a manager that cares also about your growth as an individual. They will find opportunities for you to shine. They will celebrate your achievements to the wider team. They will find the areas that will put the spotlight on you if you so want it. They will help you get promoted. They will help you grow. They will help you achieve more. They will give you the opportunities to build yourself. They will give you the opportunities to grow on a personal level, also on a functional engineering level. They will give you the area and space to make mistakes. It's very important. And they will not blame you for these mistakes, but they will work with you to understand the problems and to try to avoid at least the problems down the line, and for you to learn the appropriate lessons out of the mistakes when they occur, not if they occur. They will always occur. It's a matter of when. A good manager also will be aware of how much effort you're putting in and whether you are going in the direction of a burnout. It's very important that you don't burn out, because a burnout is very, 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 very bad. People don't understand what a burnout is until they experience it, and when they experience a burnout, they will regret it. I have experienced a burnout because of many reasons. One of them is me being stubborn on, being overproductive, but at the same time, I was under a lot of pressure at work. We had a very crazy project, crazy deadlines, horrible engineering practices, a lot of very bad things were happening, and it led to me burning out. I had to stop coding for 2 years. Mentally, I was not able to open my laptop, put on a terminal anymore. It's that bad, right? A burnout is not just about being tired. A burnout is basically feeling anxiety and being disgusted from even looking at what caused your burnout, right? It's very important. Some people might never recover from a burnout. So please be aware of this. Burnouts are real. It's not about being weak. Burnout can happen to pretty much anyone, and there is no one that is strong enough to avoid a burnout. It's impossible. You need to be aware. You need to take the time to relax. You need to take the time to switch off. You need to take the time to, recharge and start again. A good manager will basically help you avoid will help you avoid burnout. It's very, very, very important. A good manager is also not just a good manager. A good engineering culture overall fosters kindness. This is something I love about GitHub. It's basically, we promote a lot the concept of being kind over anything else. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It does not matter how much achievement you have. It doesn't really matter how successful you are. If you are not kind, all of this really fades away, right? Being kind is essential. We all have struggles in our lives. We all have problems in our personal lives. We all have responsibilities. We all have different stories, different backgrounds. We all come from different parts of the world, and it's being smart. There are plenty of smart people, and whenever you work in companies like GitHub, you will realize that there are a lot of smart people around you. A lot, because they can pretty much afford to hire whoever they want. So you will see that there are a lot of amazing, brilliant, overachieving individuals, but kindness is something that you have to practice, right? It's something that you have to be conscious conscious of, and that you need to apply in your day-to-day life. A healthy engineering culture is an engineering culture that applies and practices kindness, be it in code reviews, be it in just how you communicate and how you set the tone and how you converse, and you being respectful of everyone else's time, and you being thoughtful of people and their what they're going through. And kindness is a very good indication of a healthy culture overall. I see here a comment in Arabic from Yusuf. I'm going to try to translate, and I'm very happy that you were able to make it as well. All right, so you're saying, Yusuf, that you did not really work in the field. What are the common problems or mistakes that new people make when they join a new job in this field that you should think about? And okay, good. I understand the question. So what are the common problems or mistakes that new beginners in this field make in general? I would say biting more than you could chew. And when I say that, it's basically meaning a lot of people, myself included, join the field and they are hungry and anxious to do a lot more complicated stuff. We want to, shine. We want to show that we are able to do things. We want to take on more challenges, bigger challenges. And often that leads to creating an incident very early on in your career. And it's fine because it's a good learning exercise, but that could lead to, it depends on the company culture and whatnot, but that could lead to a negative outcome for you. So even though you might be hungry, be patient as well. Take your time, learn from others, try to understand, build up experiences gradually. It's okay to make mistakes, but don't rush into wanting to do everything from the first day. Ease into it, take your time. It's okay. You can learn gradually. Ask your seniors, try to learn from them. A lot of the juniors are very hungry to do things themselves very early, and that's okay. But still, the seniors have been in the field for a much longer time. That does not mean that they know everything. That's not true. And it doesn't mean that you need to idolize them. And that does not mean that they are not wrong, right? But it also means that they might know something that you might not. So before you immediately start, arguing and things like that, try to understand what they are trying to tell you, try to understand where they are coming from, try to be in their shoes, try to absorb their perspective. And as you become more and more senior, you will understand that sometimes people don't know how to communicate certain things, and that you have to be aware of how people communicate, and then you develop this nice skill of being able to sort of extract the words out of people when you start being more empathetic, when you put yourself in their shoes, when you build up the experiences over time. And yeah, the more projects you build, the more you are involved, the more experience you will have, the more you will be able to anticipate problems before they happen. You're still going to have problems because there are many things that you will not be aware of. But my main advice is, again, just try to be patient, ease into it, learn from others, put your ego in a box and leave it somewhere else. Your ego has no room in the workplace, especially when you are starting out your career. Michael Signs, hello, and I'm very happy that you're able to join, Michael. And I really miss working with you. Michael is a colleague of mine. He's saying healthy engineering has an appreciation for diversity in thought, 100%. Different ideas shine at different times, but not knowing about a great idea because it's not suggested is a missed opportunity. And I could not agree more. You are 100% right. I touched upon the point of diversity early on in this session where we talked about a lack of diversity being a red flag if you join an organization, and because homogeneity does not necessarily mean like what we look like, but it can also mean being homogeneous in how we think and how we approach problem solving. Diversity is 100% a catalyst of positive change and a lot of creative change. It's very important to foster these in your organizations and allow everyone to be comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas. Being defensive all the time has no room in healthy engineering environments. I want to also share with you some good stuff that I learned, across my career. I've definitely joined teams and companies that did many things really well. And I want to say, beyond growth, beyond, your direct relationship with your managers, so on and so forth, a healthy engineering culture is basically being able to build bonds with your colleagues, being able to just be yourself, right? Of course, that does not mean that you're just gonna go crazy on the on the company retreats or company parties and just do all of the crazy stuff. But that also means that being genuine, being honest, having the capacity to be yourself and not just put on a mask when you go to work, helps engineering cultures be more natural, easier to work in, and just be nice environments overall. I talked a lot about kindness, and yeah, lack of gossiping. That's also important in healthy environments. Gossiping is fine. It's always going to happen. It's okay to talk to people, about different experiences, your perspectives about the work environment, but it becomes really horrible when people start talking negatively about others, and you don't really want to participate in that type of gossiping because it really does not lead to a healthy work environment. Try to stay positive. Try to speak only good things about colleagues, even if you know that your colleagues are doing something wrong or that they're not necessarily performing up to the level or whatever it is. Gossiping is really horrible, and it will just have a very negative impact overall, and it's just not going to make you, the person who's talking about your colleagues in that manner, look in a good way, and it's going to make others avoid you, because if you're gossiping about another person with them, then you're probably gossiping about them as well to other people, right? So again, Try to stay positive. Try to only say positive things about others. Try to always give others the benefit of the doubt. People will not always perform up to the level all the time and up to your expectations. People will go through trends. They will have different problems in their life. Maybe they have kids. Maybe they're going under a lot of pressure. Maybe they're sick and they don't want to talk about it. There are many reasons. So try to be empathetic and try to trust your colleagues and avoid gossiping. It's fun, I know, sometimes, but just don't do it in bad faith. And it's okay to blow off steam. It's okay to share experiences, but talking about other people in a very negative way is really horrible. And I've seen this a lot in companies. It spreads like wildfire, and toxicity can start with one person and it could spread to the whole organization. When do you know it's time to seek a new job in another company and leave the current one? That's a very good question, Ahmad. And I have a few rules of thumb that I practice myself. So first of all, one very important rule of thumb for me, and this is a rule of Pinky, but again, because I'm going to go this way. So first one is when I stop learning. So when I stop having new challenges, when I stop learning, when I stop growing, not necessarily just technically, right? You could grow in so many different things. You could grow in people management. You could grow in communication style. You could grow in consultative style, in advisory. Software engineering is a field beyond just writing code and solving technical problems. There are a lot of things that go into it. So if you stop growing on any of these levels, this is a sign that it's probably time to look for a challenge elsewhere. If you are in part of a good big company, it's okay to look for challenges within the company, and that's totally fine. So consider that as the first option. The second thing is, if the toxicity of the environment really grows beyond my control and I can no longer influence it, and maybe even the company is going in a direction that does not really match my values, or it does not really match my principles, that's probably also a time for me to go and go elsewhere. Because obviously, no matter how much I love my company, no matter how much I love the people that I work with, if the company is going in a direction that does not work well for me, it's probably time to go, because I hardly believe that I can change the direction of an entire company, right? A third thing is, if there's a high churn rate across the organization overall, if many people are leaving, this is an indication that there are things really bad that are happening. It's probably time to explore something else, especially when your management, your colleagues, whoever, don't want to listen to the problems and they don't want to address them. There's a very common pattern that happens across organizations, which I call the shock absorber managers. These are the managers that are very good at listening, but they are horrible at acting on what they just listened to. And this is common. This happens everywhere. Managers will listen to you. They will acknowledge the problems, so on and so forth, but they are powerless and they cannot really impact change. Then it's really probably a good time also to leave, because if things are not going to change for the better, then maybe by leaving, this could introduce or be the catalyst for change, right? Do not, again, as I mentioned, do not be desperate. If you are desperate, you will be stuck, unfortunately. Try to always work on your skills, try to always improve, try to always to get yourself to the next level. And if you continuously do that, and if you continuously invest in yourself and grow, the options for you will be practically limitless. And I think we are about 13 minutes over time. We are getting closer to the weekend. I want to wrap up the conversation here. I think I talked a lot today, and I love the questions that came in and the interactions and the comments and the vibes. It's always amazing having a lot of awesome people join these lives, and that's exactly why I'm doing it, because making videos is nice, and I will probably continue doing those, but I definitely want to engage with you. I want to build a nicer community. I want to tackle the things that are relevant and important for you. I don't want to preach. I just want to share my experiences and maybe even learn from some of your experiences, right? This has been really fun. I'm really enjoying these episodes. I'm definitely going to schedule another live. I'm not sure about next week, maybe the week after that, because I want to prepare a nice topic. I think I want to talk about what does it mean to be a senior software engineer? What does seniority actually mean? What does it mean to be a staff engineer? what are the responsibilities that a senior engineer needs to know? How do we, move up the ladder? How do we become a senior engineer? And how do we progress in this career? And how do we evolve? Um, you probably are well aware this field is my passion. I love it. I love everything that happens into it. And I love communicating with all of you. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching this session. As usual, my name is Bassem, and I see a question from Marwa. Oh, it's not a question, it's actually a comment. She says, I totally agree on what you said about talking to your managers on what you are experiencing. I did that recently and the results are amazing to my surprise. Yes, please do. Today, I was talking to a friend of mine about his experience with his engineers, and he's managing them, and he's been a little bit frustrated because his engineers are surprising him sometimes with stuff, and they don't really talk to him, and like every time they talk it feels like everything is great, but then surprise, they come with something that's really bad. If you talk to your managers, they will listen, they will help you navigate these problems, and if they can't do it, the really good ones will tell you that they can't do anything about this, but they will try to find ways to influence certain things, and maybe it's just a temporary thing that will fade away, or maybe they could really make a change to make you more comfortable and satisfied in your job. I want to wrap up right now. Thank you very much, Marwa, for your comment, and thank you very much, everyone, for watching. As usual, my name is Bassem, and this has been Glitch. I want to wish you a great rest of the week, a fantastic weekend, and I will see you next time. Take care.